All right. So we're going to talk about production albums. And Kelly's asked me about, like, okay, what's the deal with production albums? So production albums are generally this. Now, in licensing, the one thing that you don't have, and when you do have it, it's rare, is something standard. Seriously, like you could, what's the definition of blank? And you could say the definition of it. And then 2 weeks later, you could run into somebody in a meeting or someone who's using the same term with a different definition. It's like, it's kind of a disease that runs throughout this industry. So I'm going to give you a definition of a production album, and you might hear variations on this definition even. But I'm just going to give it to you as I've seen it over my years in the licensing industry. Normally, a production album is made up of about 10 tracks or so, 8 to 10 tracks. Yes, it's an album, meaning a collection of songs. And no, it's not released as an artist releases it for their career. It's released into the industry for money, for making money, for production companies. That's why it's called a production album. That's why it's called production music. It's for production companies, film production companies.
And there's the audience that I was at.
Yeah. Ad agencies, film production companies, especially ad agencies, because it can go for commercials, for radio commercials, for TV commercials. And here's some other scenarios. So you're an end user. So who's an end user? Let's just think of an end user here, and then we'll talk about that as an example. Okay. So an end user could be an ad agency. Okay. And you get this to a licensing company. Now, we're going to look at a real life example. I'm going to show it to you right now. I'm going to get it and then share my screen. Let me just get this. It was in the webinar that we did recently, and it was about Paul Armandiraz. And
all right, the gaming.
Yeah, well, that was one thing. Yeah. He got some video games. He got America's Got Talent. He got another major video game. Now he got a commercial from the same production album. And I'm finding it right now. Position Music. Okay. We're going to look that up. So Paul was literally following the assembly line. I was showing him the total team process. And he was on Life as a Group Activity. He got an intern. He got another intern. He had 2 interns. What do I do with them, Gary? Hey, have them go and look online to see if there's any companies that deal with your kinds of music. I said, what do you want to focus on? Spaghetti Western music and what was the other one? Spaghetti Western.
I'm amazed at that as a genre here, right? Because I mean, that takes me back to the 1970s and Sergio Leone and early Clint Eastwood movies, and to think 50 years later that is still a legitimate need is amazing.
Yeah, and that it's a great statement you just made, because people will say to me, I got to focus on the now sound because it's dated, and is that going to hurt my licensing career? I'm like, no, that's going to help your licensing career. How many movies and TV shows and commercials are always about this year? Like, think about that for a minute. Like, how many movies come out every year? You go to the theater, and how many of them are about 2022? They're usually about the future or the past.
Right.
That's what they're about. They're about the future or the past. So, yeah, so there's no need in licensing to make a production album, for instance, that has to sound like now. And again, Paul's a great example. Spaghetti Western was one of his things, right? And then the other one was, let's see, let me find it again. Surf rock and spaghetti Western songs. All right, so then he got America's Got Talent, Call of Duty, Crew 2, and he has new ones now. So we go to Position Music. This is what the intern found, and the intern set up a Zoom call, and the guy said, yeah, I'll do the Zoom call. It was during the pandemic, but still, that's how they operated it. They found out, because they're in England. Okay, this company's in England. Paul was in San Diego at the time. His intern sets up a Zoom call. Paul gets on the Zoom call. What's this about? He's asking his intern. Oh, an intern's like all proud and got all the information, says, hey, listen, I got this thing for you. And they want to do your kind of music. So they want to talk to you. And they do licensing. So Paul's like, okay, awesome. And he's like, Gary, what do I talk about? Like, all this was new. Everything was new to him. And at that time, he was learning checkerboard AB music, the mute automation checkerboard AB system. And he was like just going to town on just being a monster on that. Okay. So then he has the Zoom call with them. Yep, there it is. There are all his tracks. Well, at the top. He's at the top. And I think it's this top one up here that, let's see, what does it say here? Artist. Oh, he goes under Pablo.
Right. A Fistful of Dollars is one of the early movies that Sergio Leone did with Clint Eastwood and established the genre.
Yeah. So they're calling it Western music, a fistful of Western. They call it Western. Here's his page. This is perfect example.
You hear it? You know, the moment you hear it, you know what it is.
Yeah, and so these I went over with a fine tooth comb with him with his checkerboard AB. It's when he was learning checkerboard AB and when he was perfecting it. But by the end of this production album, I was watching him work and just looking over his shoulder a little bit, going, yeah, that's good. Try this, do that. At the beginning, he was like, I was doing it for him. Yeah, I want to point out this thing. When you're doing a production album, sometimes you'll work with a very good company. Like this company paid him to do the recordings. Not a lot, but they paid him like in the hundreds of dollars per track. Okay. They paid him. And they gave critiques. And so he would share the critique with me and I would help him through the checkerboard AB. And they were amazed, Kelly, at how fast and accurate he made the changes.
Very cool.
Because he was doing the checkerboard AB,
So yeah, no, that's awesome. That was great.
Yeah.
Very good explanation of what the production album is. Oh, and I was going to say this, after we talked about this the other day, I went and Googled production album. And I couldn't, and how often do you Google something and you can't find out? I didn't find anything that was like, this is what a production album is. It's probably the case with most musicians that they're really good, I do this well, here's this thing that I do well, that they could easily, churn out a collection of music for. So that's really cool. It's inspiring and exciting to me to think of this idea of doing this kind of thing.
Yes. Yeah. So we entered this world that can tend to be quantity culture. Production albums can be quantity culture where you listen to them and you're like, they're good, but like, this is great, and he's making good money from this. You know what I mean?
Yep.